Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert. What a way to end the first quarter of the college football season. Week 3 was filled with tons of exciting games, and we even saw its fair share of upsets as we saw 6 losses among top 25 teams, and 3 of those losses coming to unranked opponents. We saw Texas defeat number 22 USC 37-14, getting revenge on that devastating double overtime loss they had against the Trojans last year. We saw San Diego State play number 23 Arizona State, who just last week beat Michigan State. The Aztecs won 28-21 in what was an absolute thriller. I hope you stayed up for that game because it was a crazy ending and a devastating blow for Herm Edwards and the Sun Devils team, but they are still certainly in Pac-12 title contention. Hopefully they can bounce back from that loss. But probably the biggest upset of the day was BYU going on the road and beating number 6 Wisconsin 24-21. I think by far that was the biggest upset of the day. Yes, we saw LSU go on the road and defeat Auburn. Yes, we saw North Texas go into Arkansas, who's not the best SEC opponent, but win by 27 points against an SEC team. But I think BYU, that was probably the most impressive performance of the day, going on the road and defeating what was many considered maybe the Big Ten favorite right behind Ohio State, and winning that game against a solid Wisconsin team on both sides of the ball. So week 3 filled with tons of excitement. We saw the upsets. We're going to recap it, show how we did on predictions, how we did against the spread, and show the teams that are trending up and trending down. So our record straight up was 36-13 this week, which if you round up is 74%, 73.5%. So not our best week, our worst week to date as of right now. This season, this has been our worst week. And I give a lot of credit to those upsets that caused those 13 losses. Yeah, we missed some games that we just didn't think would go our way. I picked Auburn to beat LSU. With that game being at Jordan-Hare, I expected the Tigers, the Auburn Tigers, to take care of business, but give a lot of credit to LSU and Ed Ogeron for going in there, getting the job done, winning on a last-second field goal. So a very exciting game there. Overall, we are now 127-32, which if you round up, it's 80%. It's practically 80%, 79.9%, and just on the outside looking in of that 80% mark, which that would be the ultimate goal to get there, but obviously by the end of the season is to stay above 75%. That's always been our goal, is to stay above 75%. We are well above that now. I don't expect us to drop below that anytime soon. So 127-32 overall. That would just continue to improve as the season goes on. Against the spread this week, we were right at 500, going 4-4, and I put those spread picks out on my Twitter at Gridiron Expert. So make sure you keep checking that out for some Twitter picks and some live tweets as the games are going on. We did a lot of those this past Saturday with the crazy day that was college football. So we were right at 500, so if you bet on those, you broke even. Overall, against the spread, we are 26-21, which is 55.3%, which in all honesty isn't that bad. I've done against the spread picks for a couple of years now, but never as detailed and as into it this year as I have been in the past. You know, this year I really am putting a lot more work into it. Past couple of years it's just been for fun. So 26-21. Hopefully the goal is to stay above 500 there. If you can stay above 500, that means you're winning money. If you go below, you're losing money. So that's our goal there. 26-21, not too bad. Obviously much more difficult than straight up. So teams trending up. We're going to go ahead and break these down. This is kind of the bulk of our week 3, or every week. This is kind of the bulk of our recaps. Boston College, what a season so far for the Eagles and Steve Addazio and A.J. Dillon, who I think is a legitimate Heisman contender. He's averaging a whopping 7.3 yards per carry, has over 400 yards already on the season, and 4 touchdowns. They got a solid win over Wake Forest, that game being played early, I believe, last Thursday due to Hurricane Florence, and as always, keeping all those victims in our thoughts and prayers. But the Eagles are looking really, really good. I saw a picture of their schedule. Someone said they had the potential to maybe even start, I think it was 7-0. Their schedule is not that difficult until about the back half of the season. They do have a game against Miami, but I predicted the Eagles to win that game. It's going to be on a Friday night. They're going to be rested. They're going to be hyped. Boston College is a legitimate contender in the ACC this year, especially in an ACC that is fairly weak, with its biggest competitors, I think, probably being Virginia Tech, Clemson. Maybe you could throw Miami back in there, but Florida State's having a very down year. Louisville, not what they used to be under Lamar Jackson. So Boston College has a really great opportunity here to have a strong start to the season and really compete for a chance at the ACC title. You've got Syracuse, who also started off 3-0, one of the best starts I can't remember in recent memory from me, but getting the huge win over Florida State. And that was a game that I should have changed. I had that in the back of my mind. I went on to a couple other shows last week and even said that I thought Syracuse might beat Florida State. I should have changed it on here, but didn't. But it's got this annihilated the Seminoles. I think it was 30-6, 30-7, somewhere around there. Florida State just 1-2 on the season. That one win coming over Samford, where they barely defeated them. They had to get a late pick six to solidify that win. But the Orange and Dino Babers, this was the year that he really needed to break through. And I thought that he had the talent to maybe get to a bowl game. I think I had them at 5-7. But if I change some predictions, I certainly will see them going to a bowl game this year, especially with that type of offense led by Eric Dungy at quarterback. Syracuse playing some really, really good football right now. I know some people will say they haven't played anybody. Some people will say that Florida State is a nobody because of the struggles they've had this season. But that's a very impressive win for the Orange at home, 3-0. Should be going to a bowl game at some point this season. BYU, obviously we've already talked about them, certainly trending up, getting that huge win over Wisconsin. Their lone loss coming to a good California team, getting a huge upset win, I thought, in week 1 against Arizona, another team that's struggling, who Florida State and Arizona, I believe both were on our teams trending down last week. But BYU, a team that I thought Kalani Sitake was kind of on the hot seat going into this season. Had a good year in year 1, I think going 9-4. Last year going 4-9. So he was right at 500 coming into year 3. And I was concerned about the strength of schedule. How difficult the schedule was going to be. Arizona, California, Wisconsin, Washington. They still have to play that game against Washington. But BYU coming out in the first 3 weeks being 2-1, they're in a very, very good position. I don't think they'll beat Washington. So, but once they start playing those Mountain West opponents, some of the weaker opponents, they have a very good chance of cracking 8 wins, 9 wins, something around there. So BYU certainly trending up. And LSU, usually we do not put teams that are like in the top 10 or sometimes even in the top 25 on our teams trending up because those are the teams that are good. Those are the teams that are going to be contenders. But I had to put LSU up here just for the way they've been playing. A huge win over Miami in week 1. They're the only team in the nation that has 2 wins over top 10 teams at the time, defeating Miami in week 1 in Dallas, and then going on the road and defeating Auburn 22-21 in what was an absolute thriller there. So you have to give credit to Ed Orgeron. You have to give credit to that defense more than anything. The defense has been the strength for this LSU team, playing extremely well, one of the best in the entire nation. And Joe Burrow starting to find his niche in this LSU offense, really starting to become a threat. LSU, honestly, I think could be or is the biggest threat to Alabama in the SEC West. I mean, Auburn is still a major competitor, don't get me wrong. I even saw a fact out there that said Auburn, every time they have won the SEC West, they have lost to LSU first. So that was an interesting fact. I believe that's what that was. But LSU, the way they're playing, they look very dominant to me. They still got some tough games, though. They got games against A&M. You've got games against Mississippi State, Georgia. Still have that date against Alabama. So the schedule is not getting any easier for the Tigers, but they are certainly trending up, and Ed Orgeron has them going in the right direction. So I can't wait to see how they do against some of these tougher opponents like Alabama and Georgia. Teams trending down. A lot of red here. And I'm not picking on anybody necessarily. We'll start up here with Arkansas in the SEC. Arkansas fans, I understand your pain. It's rough. It's rough for the Razorbacks this year, and we knew they were going to go through some growing pains with Chad Morris and his new staff and changing that offense and defense from the Brett Bielema era. But it's kind of inexcusable to see an SEC team go on the road, lose to Colorado State after blowing an 18-point lead, come back home the following week and lose to North Texas by 27, 44-17 at home. And I'm sure you've all seen that crazy punt return, the fake punt return by North Texas, where the Arkansas players didn't hit him. They didn't play until the whistle was blown. So they kind of faked the fair catch and then took off, and that put North Texas up 14-0. So Arkansas going through some major growing pains, major struggles in the first year of the Chad Morris era, and after looking at their schedule, there was a legitimate possibility that Arkansas might not win another game the rest of this season. Maybe they steal a win against Tulsa, maybe one against Vanderbilt. But Vanderbilt going on the road and nearly beating Notre Dame, that might be a bit of a stretch too. So Arkansas is looking, I think, anywhere between a 1-11 and a 3-9 year. So certainly trending down. They might pop back up here as the season goes on, depending on their performances. But the next 3 games for them, Texas A&M, Auburn, Texas A&M, and Alabama. So rough stretch for the Razorbacks. Nebraska, Scott Frost, these new coaches are having a rough time. You look at Willie Taggart at Florida State, who was on here just last week. Arizona with Kevin Sumlin on here just last week. Arkansas and Chad Morris, Scott Frost in Nebraska. Looking to Colorado and your season opener, because I know the original season opener got canceled, it's fine. Colorado's a solid team. I had them on my team trending up last week, so they are a solid team. But losing at home to Troy, 24-19, I believe, that is another thing that is inexcusable and very embarrassing for the Cornhuskers. Look, anytime you have a new coach, you've got to go through these growing pains. You've got to suffer through the trials. You've got to suffer through the errors. You've got to figure out what's going to work for these football teams. The players have to buy into what their coaches bring to the table. But no one, including myself, thought Nebraska was going to start off 0-2. This is a very, very rough start for Scott Frost. I do think he's the right man for the job, and a lot of people call for their coaches' heads after a pitiful start. They're calling for Chad Morris, they're calling for Willie Taggart, they're calling for Scott Frost. And you can't do that, but Nebraska really needs to turn things around, and things aren't going to get any easier with a trip to Michigan in week 4. So there's a very good chance Nebraska starts off 0-3. So a very brutal start to the Scott Frost era. USC also trending down. I had them going 8-4 this season, and a lot of people thought I was crazy when I said that. But we'll read some comments about that as the season goes on, because USC isn't going to win out. It's not going to happen. They are 1-2, losing to Stanford and Texas, where they could just not muster any offense. So is JT Daniels the right man for the job? I don't know. But you muster 3 points against Stanford, losing 17-3. Then you get up 14-3 against Texas, and then lose 37-14. So this is a USC team that certainly has a lot of questions. And when you lose as much talent as they had last year, I said last year that I thought the team was better last year than they were this year. People thought I was crazy for saying that. Certainly hasn't been the case. Last year's team, I don't think, started off 1-2, if I'm not mistaken. They did, I believe, the year before with Sam Darnold in that team, but not last year. USC certainly going through some growing pains. They still have a date against Notre Dame with the season finale, sitting at 1-2 right now. 8-4, 9-3, or even worse is looking very possible for Clay Helton in this squad. And then you have a lot of people are questioning, will Clay Helton get fired if he does anything worse or goes right at 8-4? We'll have to wait and find out. I think that would be ridiculous. But USC, of course, holding their team and their program to very high standards. Then Iowa State, I know maybe not, they could be up here, but they're 0-2, a team that I really thought was going to kind of do a little bit better to start off the season. I did have them, I think, starting off 2-4. So, but I'm concerned with their offense. They put up some good numbers against Oklahoma, without a doubt. Gave the Sooners another fight at home. So, very good, very solid performance for them despite losing. But only mustered 3 points against Iowa in their season opener because their original also got canceled. So, Iowa State really needs to kind of figure out what's going to go on here. They need to really turn some things around, start racking up some wins. They've got a tough schedule ahead of them. I still think they can get to bowl eligibility. I really do believe that. I think their offense is good enough to get them to bowl eligibility. Their first 2 tests weren't easy, Iowa and Oklahoma, understandable. So as the season progresses and they start to kind of find their wits about them and start going up against some of the easier Big 12 opponents, I think they can do that. But right now I have them trending down just because of that 0-2 start. So those are our teams trending up. Trending down, our recap on Week 3. All of our records here. Week 4 is once again going to be even better. We're starting to enter the conference play, regular conference play. Most of these non-conference games or solid ones are done now, so get ready. This is when the most exciting part of college football begins, and we are starting to really separate the pretenders and the contenders. So we're going to address that in our Week 4 preview, so make sure you stay tuned for that. And as always, please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.